Well, welcome back to RamZland. I'm so glad that you're here today. The point of this lesson today is to review how to find the surface area of a cylinder. And you know that we already talked a little bit last week about how to find the volume of a cylinder. But today we're going to talk about the surface area and the lateral surface of a cylinder. And so I want to look at a few examples with you to just help illustrate that. And in this first example, you can see that a popular cylinder is just a toilet paper roll that you can see right here. And one of the things I want to familiarize you with in this lesson is what the lateral surface of a cylinder is. So this curved part here that goes around a cylinder, that's called the lateral surface. So when you find the surface area of a cylinder, you have to figure out what that is. So the formula for finding the surface area of a cylinder is kind of like you've got 2 pi r squared. So you have to find the area of a circle, but you can see on a cylinder, you've got a circle here and you have a circle here. So the top and the base of a cylinder are 2 circles. So for the formula, you've got 2 times pi r squared. So normally when you find the area of a circle, it's pi r squared. You're going to multiply it by 2 because you have 2 of them. And then you've got to add that with the surface area of that lateral surface, which is simply 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So once you add both of these, then you would multiply that by pi. Let's look at some examples of how to do that. So popular cylinders, as you can see, is like a can of soup or even a can of tuna down here. These are all cylinders, of course, so like a pop can. Okay, let's take a look at this example. So here again, this is a geometric net of a cylinder that's been disassembled. So you can see very clearly the top of the cylinder is a circle, the bottom of the cylinder is a circle. The lateral surface, if you were to unwrap it, is like a long rectangle, okay? So in this case, if your radius is 2, you'd have 2 times pi times the radius squared. The 2 here is the area of both bases, the top and the bottom, okay? Remember, pi over here is the circumference of any circle. That's the distance around it divided by the diameter. It's always going to equal 3.14 or 22 over 7. So in this example here, you can see that they're simplifying it over here. So if the radius was 4, radius squared would be 4 times 4, or 16 times 2. 16 times 2 is 32. So this right here is the 2 bases. And then the lateral surface is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if the height is 3 and the radius is 4, you'd have 3 times 4 is 12 times 2 is 24. So that's where this 24 comes from here. Then you simplify it by just adding these 2 numbers together. You get 56, multiply that by pi, and that's where you get 175.8. That's the surface area of the cylinder. Let's look at some examples together down here. Okay, so in this example, you have, and I would recommend having a calculator ready for this. And I would also make sure that you've got some scratch paper to look at a few of these, okay? I think for us, let me see if I can pull up a calculator for you guys to look at while I do this so that you can kind of see what I'm typing as we go here. Let's see, where is the calculator? I thought it was under Windows Accessories. Look up here, calculator. Okay. So we'll have a calculator here so you can kind of see what I'm using. All right, so for the first step in number 5, I've got the 2 bases, okay? So I have 2 times pi r squared, okay? So here you can see the radius again is halfway across the circle. So if I had 3 times 3, I'd have 2 times pi times 3 squared, okay? So 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. So I have 18 times pi, all right? That's just for the top and the bottom, okay? The second step is the lateral surface, and that's 2 times pi times the radius times the height, okay? So again, we said the radius was 3, the height is 2. So 3 times 2 is 12. So I have 2 times pi times 12. Then I want to simplify that by doing 12 times 2 is 24. So now I have 24 times pi. That's for the lateral surface. Now my last step is just to add. So I have 18 pi plus 24 pi. So I know 18 plus 24 is going to be 42 pi. And then your last step is to finally multiply it by 3.14. So let's find out what that is. So I have 42 times 3.14, and that's going to equal 131.88. So I'm going to write 131, and it says round to the nearest tenth, so we could round 88 to 0.9. And I would say feet squared because, again, this is surface area. This is not volume, okay? So number 5 would be 131.9 feet squared. Again, make sure you have a calculator for these because you've got a few calculations. All right, so let's do this one just the same way. Let's find the bases first, okay, which is 2 pi r squared. So if the radius is 1, that's just 1 times 1 times 2. So this is going to equal 2 pi. All right. Next is that lateral surface. That's 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So the radius is 1, the height is 4. So 1 times 4 is 4, times 2 is 8. So this would equal 8 pi. Then I would just simplify it by adding these two numbers. So now I have 2 pi plus 8 pi. 2 pi is the area of the bases. 8 pi is the area of that lateral surface, the curved part of the cylinder. So 2 plus 8 is 10 times pi. Now, you know when you multiply by any multiple of 10, you just move the decimal according to how many zeros there are. So 10 has 1 0. So I'm going to move my decimal for 3.14 one space to the right, and it would equal 31.4 square meters. And that's your surface area for this cylinder. Let's look at number 7. The more of these you do, the easier it gets. Okay, so first let's find the area of the bases. We know that's 2 pi r squared. So the radius is 7. So I know 7 times 7 is 49. So I'm going to do 2 pi 49. So now I have to do 2 times 49 is going to equal 98. So this simplifies to 98 pi. Okay, that's the bases. Now I want to find the lateral surface, and that's 2 pi times the radius times the height. So the height is 5, the radius is 7. So 7 times 5 is 35. So now I have 2 times pi times 35. Now I have to multiply 2 times 35 is 70. So now I have 70 times pi. Okay. Last step is I'm going to add those two. I'm going to add my 98 for the bases, and I'm going to add my 70 for the lateral surface. So 98 plus 70 times pi, okay? And that's going to equal, here's our calculator, 98 plus 70 is going to equal 168 times pi. So 168 pi. And I know pi is 3.14, so I'm going to multiply times 3.14. And my entire surface area is 527.52. I want to round that to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to round that to 0.5, 527.5 square feet. Okay, and that's for number 7 here. Okay, let's look at number 8 together, okay? Bases first, which is pi r squared times 2, because there's a top and a bottom. So 2 pi r squared. My radius is 2, so I'm going to do 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8 pi. And that's from my two bases, okay? Now I want to do the lateral surface. So my lateral surface is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So the radius is 2 times the height is 5 is 10 times 2 is 20. So this is going to equal 20 pi. The last thing I'm going to do is add those. So I have 8 pi plus 20 pi is going to equal 28 times pi. Let's find out what that is with our calculator. So 28 times 3.14, that's going to be 87.92, or we can just round that to 87.9. 87.9 square millimeters. Okay, let's look at number 9 together. Bases first. So the base is 2 pi r squared, because there's a top and a bottom. So the radius is 6. So 6 squared is 36. Then I have to multiply that times 2. 36 times 2 is 72 times pi. That's my top and bottom. Now let's do the lateral surface. Is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So the radius is 6 and the height is 7. So I know 6 times 7 is 42. Then I have to multiply that times 2. So 42 times 2 is 84. So I have 84 pi. So here's the last step. Just add those together. 84 pi plus 72 pi. What does that equal? Let's find out. 84 plus 72 is going to be 156. Then I want to multiply that by 3.14 times 3.14. And that's going to equal 489.8. 489.8 is our surface area. Square feet for that cylinder. Here's number 10. Now number 10 tries to confuse you a little bit because they're giving you the diameter. You don't want the diameter for your formula. You want the radius, which is half the diameter. So let's just draw that in here. We want the radius, which is going to be 3. Okay? So for our formula, we have pi, we have 2 times pi r squared for the bases. So the radius is 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to have 9 times 2 is 18. That's going to equal 18 pi for my bases. For my lateral surface, it looks like it's 12 for height. So I have 2 times pi times the radius times the height. Remember, the radius isn't 6, it's 3. So 3 times the height of 12 is 36, times 2 is 72. So that's 72 pi. Now the last step is you just add those. 72 pi plus 18 pi is going to equal 90 pi. So last step, multiply 90 by 3.14. Let's find out. 90 times 3.14, 282.6. 282.6 square centimeters for number 10. Okay, now this is your chance to try the next 3 questions on your own. Take a look at number 11, 12, and 13, and be careful because 13 gives you the diameter. You don't want that. You want half of 14. So I'm going to write in 7 here just to remind you. 7 is the radius for number 13, okay? Try out these 3 questions. If you need any help, let me know. Okay, hopefully that gave you a chance to look at 11, 12, and 13. Let's look at 11 together. So for my top and my bottom, my formula is 2 pi r squared. So if the radius is 10, I know 10 times 10 is 100, times 2 is 200 pi. 200 pi, okay? Then I want to find the area of my lateral surface. This is the part that curves around a cylinder. And that formula is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So I know that my radius is 10, so 10 times 6 is 60, times 2 is 120. So that would simplify to 120 pi. Now I just add the two. Here's 200 pi plus 120 pi equals 320 times pi. Let's find out what that is. 320 times 3.14 gives me a surface area of 1004.8. 1004.8 square feet. Hopefully that's what you got. If not, just check your steps here. Let's look at number 12. So first the bases. 2 times pi times the radius squared. Looks like the radius is 4, so 4 times 4 is 16, times 2 is 32 pi. Now let's look at the lateral surface. That's 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So my radius is 4, and my height is 9. 4 times 9 is 36. 36 times 2 is 72. 72 pi. So let's simplify that. I have 32 pi plus 72 pi. That's going to equal 104 times pi. Let's find out what that is. 104 times 3.14 is 326.56. Let's round that up to 0.6. 326.6 square inches for number 12. Let's try number 13. So we saw that 14 is the diameter, and we want half of that, the radius, which would be 7. So for my top and bottom, I'm going to have 2 pi r squared. So that means 7 times 7, that's the radius squared, is 49, times 2 is going to be 98. So I have 98 pi. Okay? Then my lateral surface is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 7, 7 times 2 is 14, times 2 is 28. So this simplifies to 28 pi. Last step, 28 pi plus 98 pi is going to be 126 pi. Let's find out what that is. 126 times 3.14, 395.64, we'll round that to 395.6. 395.6, and this is square meters. Okay. Let's take a look at some more samples here. It's a little bit easier to look at. It's just black and white. Be careful on these next 3 questions. Again, this is the diameter. You don't want that. You want the radius. So half of 4 would be a radius of 2. Okay? For number 2, they give you the radius. For number 3, they give you the radius. Take a minute. Try questions 1, 2, and 3. And if you need help, just let me know. Okay, let's look at number 1 together. So if my radius is 2, for my bases, my formula is 2 times pi r squared. So radius times the radius is 2 times 2 is 4, times 2, because there's the top and a bottom, is 8. So that's going to simplify to 8 pi. And now for my lateral surface, my formula is 2 pi times the radius times the height. So my radius is 2, my height is 7. So 2 times 7 is 14, times 2 is 28 pi. Last step is just to add those together. So I have 8 pi plus 28 pi is going to equal 36 pi. And now I'm just going to find out what that is. Let's say to the nearest tenth. 36 times 3.14 is 113.04. So I'm just going to say 113 square inches for that first one. Let's look at number 2. Hopefully you got there. So my top and my bottom is 2 pi r squared. So if the radius is 10, 10 times 10 is 100, times 2 is 200 pi. Now for my lateral surface, my formula is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 10 and my height is 13, 10 times 13 is 130. 130 times 2 is 260 pi. So my last step is add those together. I have 200 pi plus 260 pi. That equals 460 times pi. Let's find out what that is. 460 times 3.14 is going to be 1,444.4. It's a lot of fours. 1,444.4 square feet for number 2. Let's try number 3 together. So my top and my bottom is 2 pi r squared. If the radius is 6, I know 6 squared is 36 times 2 is 72 pi. From my lateral surface, my formula is 2 pi times the radius times the height. So if the radius is 6 times the height of 12, I know that's 72. 72 times 2 is 144 pi. Last step is just add those. So I have 72 pi plus 144 pi. Let's find out what that is. I have 72 plus 144. That's going to equal 216 pi. And then I'm going to multiply that times 3.14. That's what pi is. And I get a surface area of 678.24. We'll just round that to 0.2. 678.2 square yards for number 3. Look at 4, 5, and 6. Be careful of 4. They're giving you the diameter. You want the radius, which would be 9. Look at number 5. They're giving you the diameter. You want half of that for the radius, which would be 6. Try to find the surface area of these 3 questions, and if you need help, let me know, and then we'll go over them corporately. Just a minute. I just got a text from Nishan. Nishan, were you able to join? It's saying that you're having difficulty logging in. Here we go. Okay, hopefully that got Nishan into our lesson, and we'll go back to our presentation mode. And there we go. Okay, let's take a look at number 4 together. So for our bases, remember our formula is 2 pi r squared. And I know that radius is half of 18. So 9 squared is 9 times 9 is 81. Times 2 is going to be 162 pi. So that's my area for the top and the bottom. And then my lateral surface, the curved part of a cylinder, is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 9, 9 times a height of 11 is 99 times 2. So I have 99 times 2 times pi. So let's find out what that is. 99 times 2 is 198 times pi. And my last step is just to simplify that by adding the 2. 162 pi plus 198 pi. So let's find out what that is. 162 plus 198 is 360. And my last thing that I need to do is just multiply that times pi to find the surface area. So 360 times 3.14 is a surface area of 1,130.4. 1,130.4 square yards is my surface area for number 4. Let's look at number 5. So my basis is 2 times pi r squared. My radius is 6. So 6 squared is 36 times 2 is 72 pi. My lateral surface is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 6 times 13, that's going to equal 78 times pi times 2. So 78 times 2 is going to be 156 pi. My last step is I just add those two. So 156 pi plus 72 pi. Let's find out what that is. 156 plus 72 is 228. And the last step is just to multiply that by 3.14 times 3.14 for a surface area of 715.9. 715.9 square inches for number 5. Let's see how we did for number 6. So our radius is 8. So for our bases, we have 2 of them. 2 times pi r squared. 8 squared is 64 times 2 is 128 times pi. For our lateral surface, our formula is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 8, 8 times 13 is going to be 104 times 2. 104 times 2 times pi. That's going to equal 208 pi. And then I just combine these two, my 128 and my 208. 128 pi plus 208 pi is going to equal 336 pi, it looks like. 336 times pi. Let's find out what that is. 336 times 3.14 equals a surface area of 1055.04. Let's just write 1055. And this is square feet for number 6. Okay, let's scroll down here. Take a minute, look at 7, 8, and 9 on your own. It looks like they're giving you the radius for each of these. You don't have to cut any of those into half. And if you need any help, let me know. Okay, hopefully you had a minute to look at 7, 8, and 9. Remember, I think that you'd really benefit if you have a calculator for these. Surface area of a cylinder. So for the bases, it's 2 times pi r squared. You're multiplying it by 2 because there's a top and a bottom. So if my radius is 10, I know 10 times 10 is 100, times 2 is 200 pi. So I'm going to simplify this to 200 pi. And that's just the top and the bottom. Now for the lateral surface, that curved part, my formula is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 10 times a height of 15, I know that's 150, times 2 is 300 pi. Now I just simplify it by adding the lateral surface with the top and bottom. That would be 200 pi plus 300 pi is 500 times pi. Let's find out what that is with our calculator. 500 times 3.14 is a surface area of 1,570. 1,570 square feet is the surface area for number 7. Let's check out number 8. So my top and bottom is 2 times pi r squared. If my radius is 6, I know 6 times 6 is 36. Times 2 is 72 pi. So I'm going to add 72 pi with my lateral surface, which is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So my radius is 6 times a height of 15 is going to be 90 times 2 is 180 pi. So 72 plus 180 pi is going to equal, let's see, it looks like 252 pi. And let's find out what that is. 252 times 3.14 is a surface area of 791.28. Let's just say 0.3. Let's round that up to the nearest 10. 791.3. And this is square yards for number 8. Let's check out number 9 together. So my top and bottom is 2 pi r squared. My radius is 4, so 4 times 4 is 16, times 2 is 32 pi. So I'm going to add 32 pi with the lateral surface. So my lateral surface, this part here, the part that's curved, is 2 pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 4 times the height of 9, that's 36. 36 times 2 is 72 pi. So 32 plus 72 is going to equal 104 times pi. Let's find out what that is. 104 times 3.14 is a surface area of 326.56. Let's round that up to 0.6. 326.6 square inches. Let's look at a few more together. Okay, so for number 1 and 2, it looks like they're trying to fool you by giving you the diameter. You want the radius for your formula, so half of the diameter for number 1 would be 5. Half the diameter for number 2 is going to be 12. So use your formula, try to figure out the surface area for number 1 and number 2, and if you need help, let me know. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to look at 1 and 2. Let's try these together. So first is my top and my bottom. That's 2 times pi times the radius squared. So if the radius is 5, 5 times 5 is 25, times 2 is 50. Okay? Now my lateral surface, the formula for that is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 5, 5 times 3 is 15, times 2 is 30 pi. The last step is just to add the area of the top and bottom with the lateral surface. So that would be 50 pi plus 30 pi equals 80 pi. Let's find out what 80 times pi equals. I got 251.2. And this would be square yards for number 1. Let's check out number 2 together. Okay, so the top and bottom is 2 pi r squared. Looks like my radius is 12 times 12 is 144 times 2 is going to equal 288 pi. Now let's check out that lateral surface. That's 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 12, 12 times the height of 10 is 120, times 2 is 240 pi. Last step, add the area of the top and bottom with the area of the lateral surface. So I have 288 pi plus 240 pi. Let's find out what that is. 288 plus 240 is 528 times pi. And I know pi is 3.14, 528 times pi. Let's find out what that is. Times 3.14. That gives us a surface area of 1,657.92. Let's just round that to 0.9. 1657.9. And we'll say that's square centimeters. And that's my surface area for number 2. Let's check out 3 and 4 together. So for 3, it gives you a radius of 12, but for 4, it's giving you the diameter. Remember, for your formula, you don't want that. You want the radius. So half of that is going to be a radius of 4. So try to find the surface area of 3 and 4. If you need help, let me know. Okay, let's try number 3 and 4 together. So for our bases, we have the formula 2 times pi r squared. And if my radius is 12, I know 12 times 12 is 144, times 2 is going to be 288 pi. And for my lateral surface, my formula is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. And I know if my radius is 12, I know 12 times 7 is 84, times 2 is 168 pi. My last step is to add the area of the bases with the area of the lateral surface. So that means 288 pi plus 168 pi. Let's find out what that is. 288 plus 168 is 456. 456 times pi. Let's find out what that is. So times 3.14 gives us a surface area of 1431.84. Let's just round that to 0.8. 1,431.8. 1,431.8 square centimeters for number 3. Let's check out number 4 together. So my basis is 2 pi r squared. So I have a radius of 4 times 4 is 16 times 2 is going to be 32 pi. Okay. My lateral surface formula is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 4 and my height is 8, 4 times 8 is 32 times 2 is 64 pi. Now I just add that together. I have 32 pi plus 64 pi is going to be 96 times pi. Let's find out what that is together. 96 times 3.14 equals 301.44. Let's just round that to 0.4. 301.4 square meters. 301.4. Okay, a couple more. Let's look at number 5 and 6. For number 5, it looks like they're giving you the radius. That's good. Number 6, they're trying to fool you. They gave you the diameter of 14. You want half of that for your formula, which would be 7. Try number 5 and 6 for a minute. And if you have any questions, let me know, and then we'll review them corporately. Okay, let's take a look at number 5 and 6 together. So my first step is to find the area of the top and the bottom. So 2 times pi r squared. If my radius is 11, I know 11 times 11 is 121 times 2 is going to be 242 pi. Okay, and then for my lateral surface, I know my formula is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 11, 11 times a height of 6 is 66, times 2 is going to be 132 pi. My last step is to add the surface area of the top and the bottom with the surface area, the lateral surface, the curved part of the cylinder. That's 132. So I have 242 pi plus 132 pi. Let's find out what that is. 242 plus 132 is 374 times pi. So 374 times 3.14 is going to be a surface area of 1,174.36. Maybe we can round that up to 0.4. 1174.4 square yards should be your surface area for number 5. Let's take a look at number 6. So step 1 basis, 2 pi r squared. So if my radius is 7, I know 7 times 7 is 49, times 2 is going to be 98 pi. So I'm going to add 98 pi with whatever my lateral surface is. My formula for that is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So if my radius is 7 times a height of 4, 7 times 4 is 32, times 2 is going to be 64 pi. So I'm going to add 98 pi, that's my top and bottom, plus my lateral surface of 64 pi to find out what the surface area of the whole cylinder is. So 98 plus 64 is a total of 162. Now I have to multiply that by pi. So 162 times 3.14 is going to give us a surface area of 508.68. Let's round that up to 0.7, 508.7 square miles. And that's our surface area for number 6. So we've got about, let me stop our present. We've got about 5 more minutes left in this meeting. Of course, this is our last meeting for e-learning, so I'm really glad that those of you who are here were able to join us. And I'm just going to shut off our video at this point and give you a chance just to talk a little bit with each other and see how you guys are doing.